Greetings, everyone. My name is Bryce Bodell. I am a PGY5 radiology resident on the ESIR pathway at Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am also the co-chair of recruitment for the SIR-RFS. I've met a lot of people. If you haven't met me, I'm happy to chat with you afterwards. I have gotten to know quite a bit of you throughout working with you in this great adventure. I would like to welcome you, if you're new, all to session 5 of this 10-part leadership webinar series. Some of you are returning new faces, and some of you are new faces. For those of you who are new, this is a program that aims to provide tools in strategic planning and problem solving, which helps trainees and early career physicians to make significant contributions to their communities. These are 1-hour sessions once a month. They are centered around a variety of leadership topics, namely negotiation skills, networking, mentoring, teamwork, and so many more. And tonight's topic, we're going to be focusing on diversity. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, who truly needs no introduction, the one and only Dr. Janice Newsome, Division Director of Interventional Radiology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, will provide us with some insight tonight and some wisdom with regards to approaching diversity as it pertains to us as current and future interventional radiologists. As many of you know, Dr. Newsome has a very extraordinary background. She came to the United States at a young age from Jamaica, as a teenager actually, armed with a mission to benefit the lives of other people. She then completed her undergraduate and medical education at City University of New York and Mount Sinai School of Medicine, after which she completed radiology resident at Medical College of Virginia. She then completed fellowship in vascular and interventional radiology at the esteemed Miami Cardiac and Vascular Institute, after which she went into private practice in the state of Virginia, and then became staff at Emory University. And that has obviously gone along an extraordinary pathway. So we're going to get to learn about some of that tonight. Throughout her career, she's made innumerable contributions to the field of IR through not only primary research, but also dedicated involvement with multiple sections of SIR, and has somehow also had the time to provide wonderful mentorship to many, many, many trainees and individuals within the RFS, and many of you may be directly impacted by that as well. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Newsome tonight. Please, everyone, welcome Dr. Newsome, and we will get started. Dr. Newsome, it's all yours.
Good night, everyone. I want to thank everyone that is on the line for spending some of their evening. You could be doing a million other things, maybe a zillion other things, but to log on tonight for us to have this conversation, I again want to say thank you. I know that we're in listen-only mode currently, but I'm hoping that as soon as I stop talking for a second, that we can go to not just listen-only mode, because I don't want this to be a talk. I really want this to be a conversation. I did prepare just a few slides though, just so that we can get this conversation going, and I'm hoping that I'm not just talking to myself out there. And so if I can see who the attendees are, I promise I'm going to be calling your name out, Judy. So don't feel too badly about that unless you're going to log off right this very second. But thanks again for logging on. Let's see if I can be smart enough and go to the next slide. It's of course not letting me do that. So let's do it now. Yeah, there it is. So, you know, I was so excited about this topic. It says diversity, the art of thinking independently. And truly, I believe that it is really an art. And like any other craft, like an art, that you really have to try to do it over and over again so that you can get really good at it. And yes, on this this little pictorial that you're seeing, there are many different shape and colors and sizes of hands here, all asking a question, but I think that we all know that not many of these will be called upon. And I'm going to talk specifically tonight about how do we talk about diversity in our workplace in interventional radiology. What can we do as the people that are on the phone now, or the people that will be listening to this later on, to eliminate some of these misconceptions about diversity, and talk about what can we do all together that we're on the phone right now to make it a little bit more inclusive in our lab. And Bryce and I were talking earlier. I realized I should have tape that conversation because it was all about what I wanted us to talk about tonight. I do want to say, though, that I am not speaking on behalf of Emory or any other company. I don't get paid to talk. I continue to ask to be paid to talk, but I don't see it in my future. And even if I got paid to talk, or I don't get paid to talk, I would do what I do right now, regardless of any financial gain. So it really shouldn't matter too much for that. But let me start off by asking a really simple question. Have you ever been given the cold shoulder? Do you know what it feels like if you're on the phone to be excluded? I know that I have. I've been there. I have walked into a room and have people just stop talking. I have gone into other areas and have all of a sudden, in a huge crowd, recognized that I am different. I have been in big meetings, presentations, not so much at SIR, but other meetings like that, where I know that I feel that I am literally the only person in this whole room. And I'm not talking about a black and white issue. I mean, it is not that. And I had up here, that eye experiment, that you can feel excluded for any reason whatsoever. And when I was younger, I thought, oh my gosh, I was excluded because I got higher grades. And even from that standpoint, I remember when everyone would get like an A+, or everyone would get a lower grade and they would get like a frowny face. I would often go up to my teacher and I'd say, can I get like a frowny face on my grade, because I didn't want to be the only person in the class getting a smiley face. So whatever the reasons are that you feel excluded, it is our human nature to want to feel like we're a part of something. And the reasons to be excluded, it just is getting higher and higher. Every time I look at it, it is, oh, is it because I'm left-handed? Is it because I talk a little bit funny and someone is interpreting my own English language as if I need an interpreter for it? We tend to focus a lot on exclusion by skin tone, but there are people that are excluded every day for inability to have their names being pronounced. And clearly we're talking about gender identity and sexual orientation being one of them. People feel excluded because of their political affiliation. So there are 1,000 reasons to feel excluded. And I love when I look at this particular graphic, because what you're looking at is just the top of this, what we consider the waterline of visibility. We tend to always highlight these common things, but it turns out that there's so many other things that are underneath the surface. When someone is only excluding you for one thing, oh, but there's so many other things that is beneath the surface. So we can not possibly think about all the reasons that there are these biases. Just know that they really exist. But there are some things that people try to put into just black and white. Not all things are just black and white. It is this everlasting battle between one's perception of one thing versus the reality of it. And if you look at that sign on the right, through one person's eye, they see the word good. But if you look again at the white inside the black, you will see the word evil. And it is what really pops out at you when you're looking at one thing or the other. And I want to talk about this in terms of how we perceive some things in IR. Let's just talk about two words that I know that is probably overused. And I love the way that diversity was defined for this webinar. It is the art of thinking independently together. And we know that when we are talking about diversity itself, that is a fact. Whether or not you are in a diverse environment, that's just a fact. But the word inclusion is a totally different thing, and that relies on an action. And we'll talk a little bit about it. Like, how can we, in our environment, as members of the RFS, lessen the effect of this bias in our institution, especially when the line for the comforting lies are long, and we could all line up there, and no one wants to be in the line of the unpleasant truth. Is it true then that just because we know better, or Sean, or Bryce, that we're gonna do better? Is that true? I am not so sure. We know that there is a significant impact on this single thinking, the lack of diversity, and lots of things that are impacting your immediate space, whether it's related to recruitment, the people that you're seeing around you, who gets hired, who gets a higher salary, what resources are given to what place or the other, how performance reviews are held, how about promotion, or just teamwork. And again, I'm throwing out a bunch of things so that we can have a broader conversation towards the end here. But I know that I belong to a specialty that I am fighting for, and you're fighting for, that is going to look a little bit different. And that diversity, or this thinking together, although independent, it is imperative and crucial for our specialty to continue to grow. In fact, I would say that the existence of our specialty in the future, that this is a crucial part of it. It is important for recruitment, it is important for leadership, it's important for innovation, and our patients are driving that. So what can you do about it if you're someone that is in the RFS? And before I get to what we can do about it, I might want to open up the discussion for that first question, which is like, do you actually see bias in your institution? Have any of you on the phone have actually been confronted with it? Have you felt in your institution or in your everyday life in radiology and interventional radiology that you were excluded? Can we unmute?
Yeah, if anyone wants to raise their hand, I can unmute you from here. And we'll of course go one at a time. And I think Merceline, you might have had your hand raised. If you'd like, unless that was an accident.
If this is, I can certainly continue to just talk, but again, I don't want this to be a 1 hour a lecture session, because all of us could go to any lecture that and hear that. But I want this to be really us thinking independently together. Really, a conversation today of us trying to figure out how we tackle this diversity and thinking independently in our own community.
Hi, this is Naomi Atkins. I'm a Mizzou ESIR resident.
Hi, Amy.
It's Naomi. Hi.
Naomi.
I wanted to say yes. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that have. I'm pretty much the only female here that is interested in IR. We recently got a female attending, but I have not yet even met her. So I often walk into the room and conversation stops because people don't want to offend me, which I appreciate and don't appreciate at the same time. So it's kind of, you know, a double standard, I guess.
Yeah, and I know that all of us could the people that have had that experience know exactly how that feels to be again have someone feel that, oh well, I can't just say that around that person, someone that is trying to protect your feelings but not so much, right? So how
Yes.
do you handle that, Naomi? Do you say something about it?
Not usually, no. Oftentimes I try and joke because that's just what I do. And just, I don't know, start a different conversation because it's awkward.
Yeah, so I think that that's like some of those other, it's often that we're too afraid of speaking up or saying something. And I would just say, I know that you're, just at the beginning, and it may be very tough advice now, but don't feel so afraid to speak up or to say something here. Like, you are different, and I would just acknowledge that. Oh yeah, I mean, like, is there something? Is there a conversation that I could be a part of? I mean, I really just like acknowledge it right now when I walk into a room and people just stop talking. I said, hey, please continue to speak. There's no reason that you can't continue to talk. I actually speak several languages. And usually that could sometimes break the ice. But I find that the more that someone like you or me, Naomi, that we do not say something when we're in that situation, then it really perpetuates that behavior. And that even when your counterparts may want to change that behavior, they may not even be aware of it themselves. And if you're able to speak up and say, that there's just a big difference when I walk into the room, or no one else is able to understand what I'm feeling, or to walk into my shoe, but may I offer you this perspective, for instance. And then you offer people, give them an opportunity to see through your eyes, and then you give them the space, what I was talking to Bryce earlier today, the space and the grace to actually make a change, right? But if you never say anything, then they may not even realize that they're excluding your voice, or treating you different.
Thank you.
So does anybody else want to say anything about that? Because I really think that is like a very, very it's a little bit of that unicorn and maybe unicorn is not the right word, is a little bit of the elephant in the room, right? That we're all understanding that something is happening, right? That we're in a space where there is just a single thought, that everybody is just agreeing with one particular thing, but you may actually have a different opinion that is incredibly important to the conversation. But because you are excluded from the conversation, or for one reason or the other, then that thought, that idea never comes forward. And I want to try to empower all the people that are on the phone and the people that will listen to this podcast going forward, that your ideas matter. What you think matters. And half the time it is overcoming that battle that is inside of you, that to say, well, gee, I know that I'm feeling excluded, and I'm not saying that it isn't true, but how do you get past that so that you are able to to voice what it is that you're feeling and allow the people that can hear it to make a change. Because we're in a space in, I guess, our society, and not in the interventional radiology society, but in general, where it is sometimes the loudest voices that gets heard, right? And we all have been in meetings, tumor boards, morning conferences, wherever, where it just seems to be that way. But I want to caution you and to admonish the people that are on the phone here that what you think is critical to the overall growth of the specialty, what you think is important to that moment. Try not to actually acquiesce, try not to just hide because the loudest voices are actually speaking. Try to overcome that and still give your viewpoints. I am not here to say that it is the easiest thing. I'm here to say that it is an important thing, and it's the only way that we can think independently and together. And the most important factor, I would say, is 100% respect, is to be able to do this with civility and a certain amount of respect that all of us will have to dig a little bit deeper, especially when you're in a conversation with someone that that you don't exactly agree with. I was talking to Bryce earlier today, and I'm going to give an example, of this from my own personal life. I am intrinsically an optimist. I'm also intrinsically someone that sees the human beings as good. I will always give people 100%, and it takes a lot to take away from that 100. And I find that just trying to be around folks that are also like me really does not advance any of my programs or the things that I'm trying to do. And I found out that a few years ago, I had a partner who has since moved on, who is the exact opposite of me. Like, that person sees, like, forget the half full glass. There's no full glass, and there may not be even be a glass anyway, right? And yet, just being in the presence of that person made me a better interventional radiologist, made me a better mother, made me a better wife, made me a better innovator for the times that we were together. And now that I am the chief of IR, I actually seek out the opinions of folks that are not like me. There is definitely a danger of only hearing the same voices that just say what you're thinking about anyway. And this example is related to a set of students that I was working with around a project where there was some intellectual property. And my perception of the issue was, oh, let's just give it to them. They can take the whole project and have it go away. And the perception of my partner at the time was absolutely not. We should never give up our intellectual property to these students. This is our work. We should fight for it. And we're going to just not sign over our rights for this. And it was through that interaction, again, just the opposite of what I felt here, that I came to an understanding that, what would I be teaching my mentees if I went ahead and said, you can take this as your idea, although it was my idea. And I'm not sure if what I'm saying is coming through loud and clear, because I didn't want to give the whole background of the information, but just suffice to say that if you only listen to the people that agree with you, if you're only surrounding yourself with people that are just like you, you are missing out. You're absolutely missing out. And if you're the person that is to give the other opinion based on your own life experience, then you are subtracting yourself from the richness of the discussion, and then maybe a better decision at the end. So it's not just, oh, well, what can I get from the fullness of the discussion by, bringing my own uniqueness to it. But just keep in mind that as you keep your uniqueness together, then you're not contributing either to the discussion. Has anyone on the phone ever had an experience like that where you tried to be quiet and then at a time that you spoke up, what you've said actually changed the discussion altogether? Can you unmute the mics?
Does anyone have a specific hand that they'd like to raise regarding this question? And we do have another question also that somewhat pertains to this, a written-in question from someone who's unable to get microphone access right now. And I can read that. This is from Alex Kutseco. She writes, I feel like as IR physicians, we're sometimes excluded from the hospital community as the medical specialties feel we do not, or that we do procedures and that they don't belong to us, while surgery thinks that we are only small-time procedures and therefore they don't belong to us, and we're really not a part of that unit, and so we're kind of a free-floating type of entity. And she goes on to write, at least in our institution, specialties are divided quite sharply on surgical and medical. And Dr. Newsom, I think that really kind of pertains a lot to what you're saying now as well, just because that's at a time where when we do speak up as interventionalists, sometimes the outcome based on conceived notions can be all over the board, really.
Yeah, and I think that if you decide not to continue to speak up just because, again, you may be in a multidisciplinary environment where the surgeons always seem to be able to be the loudest, and it may not be today that what you've said really changes it for the patient, but it doesn't mean that if you don't say it, okay, if you keep quiet, then the patient won't get the treatment that you've said. And if you say it and they decide not to do it, then the patient still won't get the treatment that that you've said. But the only way possible that this patient could even get a treatment, a minimal invasive approach or a novel way of dealing with that particular problem, is if you speak. So Alex is right that yes, oftentimes interventional radiologists are excluded, and I think that is like multi-layered, some of it really steeped in politics. But just because I am seemingly excluded from, this particular thing or the other, it doesn't negate the fact that we have to always try our best to find ways to make our opinions known and our voices heard. And often it is not in the traditional manners in terms of tumor board, for instance. Sometimes it's in a TED talk. Sometimes it's in these podcasts. Sometimes it's in tweet. It's in a Instagram video. It is in a communication with a TV station. One thing or the other, just one day, could change that for you. So regardless of what may be happening around you, I say this very often, is that you cannot often predict or control what happens to you, but you can always control your action or your reaction to what is happening to you or around you. And so if you're committed yourself to say, what can I do to make this better? Because I know a little bit better. I've been exposed enough, as my daughter would say, and I may be wrong in using this, but I've been trying to figure out a way to say this, I'm woke. If you get woke, how is it that you're going to change this for the people that are around you? What can you do about this? Because I think oftentimes for the people who think that they're woke, for instance, that they don't have these biases, or they are into including others, they'd be shocked how they themselves, because I'm shocked at times how I myself, I am comforted and soothed by the people who agree with me, and then that actually takes me back into my own implicit bias. I would say that we need to actually reach out to groups that are outside of our own. I am tired of talking to just interventional radiologists. I actually need to talk to some other people about my specialty. Like, what am I doing talking at SIR again about this? I know that I'm talking to a group of people tonight that are already about thinking independently together, and that's why you may be on the phone. But how do I get this message across to someone who does not want diversity of thought, and they don't want other people to be in their space? Oh, forget the interventional radiology people. How do we get our messages out there? We have to come up with ways to increase contact with groups of people that are outside of our own. And then when we're confronted with our own biases, then we need to take be accountable for the things that we're saying and examine our own beliefs, right? Could it be true that I am only talking to this set of people? Could it be true that I am only informed by single thoughts and I actually haven't really included other people? I have not actually shared my own ideas into other spaces, and to try to do someone about it. We need to challenge our own stereotypes. And there are some simple things that we can do. What would it look like, Bryce, if we decided that we would treat everyone as an individual? That instead of treating people as a group, that we would value each individual person and their opinion. Then I would actually care what you're thinking, because I want that to be a part of my collective decision. What if I assess how my own stereotypes could actually color my own views? And when you're hearing that and in that environment, you need to reject other people or encourage others to reject, these stereotypes that, oh, these people always do that. Oh, girls always drive like that in our workplace. Oh, the vascular surgeons always do that. Or, again, we're all guilty, but whatever these stereotypes are for masses of people, we need to reject them ourselves and encourage others to reject that. Then we need to fight hard to find common ground. And that's how we develop this thinking together independently. This is, again, the art of it. It is not something that we're born with. Anything that is worth it will take some work, and we have to work at it. How do we ask respectful questions? How do we listen to each other with an open mind? Not that I am listening for the answers that I want to hear, or worse is that I'm listening so that I can catch you and say that, I always knew, this, that, or the other about you. It is important that we try to connect with people on a human level, because that is something that is shared by every single person. And there's always something good that you can find in everyone, knowing that everyone has value and everyone can contribute. And if you just assume that at the very beginning, you'll find that your muscles will get stronger and stronger as you develop this art of thinking independently together, that you're allowing everyone that is around you to be able to contribute because you recognize their value. And again, as you're looking at how people work, be aware that there's a range of productive work styles, right? That is not just one thing or the other, not always in black and white, and that people will have other interests and abilities and experiences. And as you try to figure that out, as you see the talent in everyone, you'll find that it will become easier and easier to include others. Now, this is something that I had a conversation today about. How do we partner with older people that may be in our community that are starting to feel excluded? Oh my gosh, I can have a conversation, Bryce, with 5 of my fellows and not understand a word that they've just said. All words I've never heard before, and already feeling that I'm on the outside of the age gap. But really, how do we partner with other people across generations and find collaborative ways to share your perspective? Luckily, I have my trainees and you guys on the phone to help me feel that I can talk to my younger patients and have a conversation in, I guess, modern language. And if I don't understand, I just ask for help, and sometimes I offer help. And these are the ways that I believe if we're able to do this in our own circles, then we can actually work on our muscles for how we're including others and thinking independently together. I'm almost done with my second to last slide, and here is where I think that you need to expect a lot. So no expectations give you absolutely nothing. So I expect the people around me to be respectful. I expect the people around me to act in a civil fashion. I expect if I make eye contact with you, that you're going to say hello. I challenge myself to learn, to grow, and to perform at a high level. Hold each other and hold yourself to high standards as you continue to work on this inclusion aspect of trying to think independently together. And then observe how your expectations drive your results. As you start trying to hold yourself and other people accountable and expect more from them, see if that changes how you interact, not only with the people that are around you, but what results do you get from it? If I actually take the time to listen to the opinions of the M1 and the M4, the ESIR, the nurses, the technologists, what about the transportation person? If I took the time to listen to the person from environmental services about whatever it is that they're trying to tell me, do I change the environment that I'm in? As people see me as a leader, you as a leader, change in our action, developing this art again of thinking independently together. How does that change our results? And then back to this same slide, right? That just because we know better, does that mean that we actually automatically do better? Maybe not. Maybe not. I think that this thing that we're talking about, diversity, it is the unfinished business in medicine. It is that line that is a little bit on the empty side when everybody is lining up on the other side. But I absolutely know this to be true, that whatever we can't acknowledge, then we can't address. And I'm not talking about we in the society or SIR form. I'm talking about me, Bryce. What I can't acknowledge, I can't address. Judy, Alex, Monica, Naomi, whoever else is on the phone. Whatever we cannot acknowledge within ourselves, then we can't address. And so I'm hoping as I get to one of my second to last slide that we can at least figure out ourselves, like given some tangible ways that we can see this as a craft, as something that we can work on, that we have to keep working on, that we're rejecting the single thinking and embracing this thinking independently together. So I'm hoping that I'm going to have a lot more comments, and if not, I have some questions that maybe I can throw out there to the audience just to get some more interaction.
So I know a couple of you had your hands raised earlier. I want to give you an opportunity if you wanted to ask any questions. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. Let me see if that worked. Unmute all. Well, if you have a question, again, raise your hand. I'll individually unmute you. It didn't work that way. And there we go. You should be unmuted. Go ahead.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe some audio issues. If anyone is having audio issues, feel free to type, and I am more than happy to read your question or comment out. If you see that the little microphone has become green on your home dashboards, everyone, that would you could speak at that moment if you'd like to. Let me try to unmute everyone again. So now you should all have control of your own microphones. If you'd like to raise a question, click on the microphone. It should be an orange circle with a microphone in the middle. It'll turn green. At that point, you can speak if you'd like to.
Dr. Newsom, could you talk about a recent experience that, sort of was a good learning point for you as a leader, and, just sort of caused some reflection for you when it comes to the issue of diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I can think about an experience almost, every day. I could think about one even this morning, but just to make sure that I'm keeping people, not calling people out that may not want to be. I will give you a story of just a few months ago. So, well, I'll just talk about some of the things even from earlier today. So I really struggle with being a leader and having my own views that I know that, again, can be quite lofty, because I do expect a lot. You can ask of the people that I work with every day. And when I see others that are challenged by some of these high standards, it is often that I can come, really hard on that person. Okay, that is way too abstract. Let me give you a more concrete example. A few months ago, there was the incident that was in the news regarding the governor of Virginia, and a yearbook picture. I don't know if everyone here remembers that. And I remember being from Virginia myself, having quite a bit of discussion about this at home with my own family, as my family thought, geez, are doctors really like that? And I remember talking to my mom and saying, doctors are a part of the society, and if you have people in the society that are a part of the KKK, then sure, they're going to be, some of them that could be physicians. Lo and behold, that there was a conversation similarly that happened at work. And here is where I was challenged to hear everyone's thoughts out, as people needed to feel that they could speak openly and honestly without me rushing to judgment. And when one of my my colleagues, not necessarily someone in an interventional, went on to express their opinion, I remember exercising these same things that I talked about on the slides, understanding that people have their opinions based on their experiences, and unless I allow that person to express where they're coming from and see them as, okay, how do I try to bridge what they're saying, respectfully disagree, understand that wherever they had their values maybe contributing to their particular conclusion, but how do I find some neutral ground? And through some of that type of discussion, I know that we were able to have a much more fuller understanding of why that action may be hurtful to some people in the society. I also know that every day I'm a part of a very diverse interventional radiology division at Emory. And most recently, we've had a few trainees that have come into our program that have challenged my own wow, I would say my own opinions, not really opinions, my own thoughts about how we deal with diversity at Emory. Now, we can all say this on paper, that at Emory or at my institution, we do not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, or disabilities, etc. Name whatever it is. But putting that into action every single day can be very challenging. And so my particular thing, and I believe I spoke to Bryce about this earlier today, is the use of pronouns or gender neutrality in our discussions. And I have stretched myself, not because I'm biased in that sense, but I've had to learn a different way of speaking. And I remember as I was trying to discuss this within our division and with the people that are around me, it was easy for me to say, we can be more inclusive regardless of what it is that we necessarily believe in our religious life or our other life. It takes nothing at all for us to be respectful of someone else's beliefs. If they would like to be addressed in that fashion, it takes nothing for me to do that. Regardless of how I may absolutely feel about one thing or the other, it is just a matter of being respectful and then demanding that respect of the people that are around you. So as a leader, just to get back to your question, I hope I'm answering the question. I would say that I demanded that all the restrooms in the division be changed to gender neutral restrooms. And that was just something that was, easily done. Someone that never thought of it, just for years and years, we had male restrooms and female restrooms. We had male and female changing rooms. We had, but if that action made other people feel excluded, then that was an easy thing for me as a leader to do, which is to say, geez, well, we will no longer have that. We will just have gender neutral restrooms. And it turns out that these single restrooms that were in our department, I had already been using them as gender neutral restrooms, because whatever bathroom was open, that's the one I would go into anyway. I hadn't even realized that there were male and female bathrooms. So if you see something in your own space, and again, this is maybe a little bit extreme, but all of us can be leaders as we are trying to help people that are around us feel less excluded. And again, regardless of what it is that you're getting excluded for, all of us understand the feeling of being left out. If you're feeling left out because, you know, of a skin color, we know what that feels like. So then you definitely understand what it feels like to be left out because of gender. You understand what it feels like to be left out because of your sexual orientation, or because of some disability, or because of your religious belief, one thing or the other. So you have to fight every day to be inclusive, not just in words, but also in action.
We've got another write-in message, or write-in question rather. This comes from Myrtle Lane. She writes, you spoke on this a little, but do you have any advice from your experience on how to push through the apathy or disregard toward diversity and inclusion that we may experience?
So how do we push away the apathy? Am I saying that correctly?
I think so, yeah. I think meaning, you know, I think that there are a lot of people out there that kind of have a careless thought about the concept of considering diversity and inclusion, you know, giving a lot of kind of an apathetic response to the public, and as we're out making our mark in the world, and we face that apathy and the lack of other people trying to, or lack of other people kind of understanding the message here. What are ways that we can push through that? I guess a disappointment of that would be a good word. Sorry, Myrtle Lane, if I didn't say that properly.
Yeah. No. I think I understand, and I would say that you know, it is our human nature to want to be a part of just, you know, your own kind and your own group. And when you only talk to, let's say, that particular group, you know, most people would say, like, I don't even see anything wrong with what we're doing. You know, all this diversity stuff is just, you know, it's just you know, the latest fad, right? Like, why do we keep talking about it? And so it's easy to become apathetic, I guess, towards it. And so I would say that this is a big issue to tackle. And I am reminded of this phrase about, you know, how do you eat an elephant? It would be one bite at a time, one chew at a time. And while you may not be able to change the whole world, you can always change you. And when you change you, then you will immediately change your circle, and you'll change the people around you. And then the people around you will change the people that are around them. And I like being able to say, well, what if I just mix it up a little bit? What if I decide that, hey, I'm going to talk about how I personally felt excluded, because, you know, each of us that are on the phone right now, we have a voice. And although we may feel excluded for one thing or the other, there's someone else that may be suffering even more than us. And the only way that that person is going to feel included is if we do something in an action to include them. So yes, the only way to, I think, fight the apathy is to individually decide that you are going to be responsible for your own action, and to do it in an open fashion, not just, oh, I'm going to do this, but make it known, hey, I'm going to have Tina do this presentation today. It's a way of amplifying the person that is around you that may be overlooked. That when you have a chance to speak up, that you give that voice to someone else. That those are ways that I can think of just off the top of my head to kind of fight the what would be considered the, oh well, it is not as important, I don't understand the biggest deal, is for the people that have a voice to actually speak up for the people without a voice, and give specific examples of when they know that they've been excluded. Because if you listen to some of our leaders now and the things that they have had to go through, the struggles that they have had to overcome, then you will also realize that, boy, it is it is a constant change. It is a constant struggle, and change will come one day at a time, and I am a part of the change. And all of you that are here, all of you that are listening to this podcast and will listen to the podcast, I would say that the change begins with you. That if you change, I promise you, things will change. And I know that, not as a saying, because I have lived that. So I can speak freely on this, that it is not waiting for things to change around you. It is that you change yourself. And then as your behavior changes and you start thinking that my solo point of view is not good enough, before I make this next decision, I need other point of views. I need to hear what you think. And I ask everyone around the room, Judy, what do you think? Michael, what do you think? Mary, what do you think? Peter, what do you think? I literally do this in every single meeting that I'm in. Make sure that I'm giving a voice to the people that are there. And if you do that yourself, then other people will be able to do that too. And before you know it, we have already changed our profession. We've changed at least the resident and fellow section, as we together develop this art and perfect this art of thinking independently together.
Excellent, thank you. I think we do have another question if we have time here. This is from Alex Gutsenko. And this is a really interesting question. She writes, how would you respond to people if they used your minority status as an excuse for your success, rather than acknowledging the real reasons for success, like intelligence, hard work, grit, social skills, etc.?
Yeah, and that is really such a toughie, because really you can't have it both ways, right? So when people say to me, Alex, like, I remember, Alex, when someone explained to me what affirmative action was, I was blown away. I thought, wow, could that really have happened? I went to Mount Sinai, and I was one of just a few minorities in the medical school. And someone said to me, geez, you are actually here for affirmative action. I couldn't even believe it. I didn't let that bother me as much. I just worked hard and harder, so that the only thing that could be said at the end was, oh, that chick, she's the hardest working sister in the medical school. Right now, people still say that. Well, she has only gotten this far because of this thing or the other, because she's a woman, because she's Black, because she's gay, because she's in a wheelchair, because she's Muslim, because there will always be that excuse. You have to know the truth for yourself. And once you understand that truth, you will stop. I know I've stopped trying to convince everyone or anyone that I'm not in a place because of, one thing or the other. If it is true that you can be promoted just because you are a woman, then why is it that there aren't more women in that field or in that top? If it is true that you can only that you can get further ahead because you're a minority, then why aren't more minorities ahead? And so I say to people who say that by the law of deductive reasoning, what you've said makes no sense. You can't have it both ways. It can't be that that women are terribly leaders, and oh, by the way, I'm a leader because I'm a woman. Like, which one is it? Is it because I'm a woman, I'm good at leadership, and now I've worked hard and that's why you're there? Or is it because I'm a woman, I couldn't get that? I don't know that I'm answering your question, the correctly, but I would just say that acknowledge the fact that naysayers will always be there. Well, people will always find something to say about your success. Remember, there are a few things that I say all the time, that no one has the right to label you. You decide who you're going to be. Only God, mom and dad, whoever creates you, can put a label on you. And whenever you find that people start saying, one thing or the other about you, I would not waste much of my time trying to convince them in words of one thing or the other. I would just work as hard as I can to prove that what they're saying is wrong.
That's excellent. We are at the 8 o'clock my time. We are at the top of the hour, and so officially that does conclude the session. But if there are any other questions, everyone's got some really wonderful questions tonight. If there are any other last questions that you'd like to ask, I'd like to give you the opportunity now.
And certainly my Twitter handle is still on the screen. It's at @AngiaWoman. We could continue this conversation via Twitter, or you can direct message me. I think nearly everyone on this phone may have my direct cell phone number. If you call SIR, they'll just give it to you.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Newsom, I think that I speak on behalf of everyone when I say we are just absolutely thankful that you were able to join us tonight and give us these words. This is really the kind of stuff that is so helpful as we all grow as leaders and just as plain old human beings. And so this is the kind of thing that discussion like this is just ever important. And, we all sincerely appreciate you taking the time to do this for us. I think this is a fantastic session, and it went extraordinarily well. I don't even know what other words to use, honestly.
It was my pleasure, and good night, everyone. And I hope to see you soon at some meeting or at the next RFS podcast or webinar.
Wonderful.
All right, have a good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.